Well, I'm going to do my best to talk loud, but I feel like, this is pretty much just a conversation between neighbors, between a community, between family, friends. Some of you I've met, most of you I have not met. But today is just kind of a response for what's been going on with the Project Mustang hyperscale data center. So thank you guys for caring enough to come out and have a night and want to learn some more and just have that meeting and a conversation to share information that we have, concerns that we have. When I say we, I mean myself specifically. I mean some other people specifically that are going to speak as well, but this is really a collaboration of like huge communities, huge groups that have been working together. This is this neighbor talking to this neighbor about this notice that they got months ago. Conversations, records requests compiled amongst a lot of different people. This is not just one person. This is not any smear campaign or political campaign to get votes or to take anybody out of office. It's just, this is what we know. We want to share it with everybody and make sure that our community is as formed as we are going forward. I'm happy to connect with any of you guys personally if you want to know more about me, but like really just know I'm here as an Oklahoman. Like I'm somebody who grew up running barefoot across the plains. I'm somebody who has been in this area my entire life. Grew up in Chelsea, graduated from RSU, bought a house in Verdigris. And when I first started looking into this project, I didn't expect it to make such an impact on like what I believe those planes are going to look like running, for my son and for my kids. So that's just all you need to know about kind of where my background is. I do have some, history of reaching out and speaking out at meetings and at different events. I definitely don't hesitate to reach out to my elected officials, but I, criticize, but also give credit where credit is due. Yeah. I think to kind of start, I'm going to do my best to give kind of my crash course of what the past 4 months has been trying to navigate and map out like what the bureaucratic system, looks like here for when a hyperscale data center comes to Claremore. And so I'm going to start with, I think, key players. And it's a lot of key players. This is part of, the validation that I want you guys to feel if you're feeling criticized for just starting to care now. If you're being told like, well, we've never had people show up to any of these meetings up until now. This is a lot to keep track of. It is very complicated. It is that way intentionally. And yes, we want to have leaders in those spaces that we can trust to handle it well enough that we can sit home on a Monday night twice a month. But this is just to help you feel better that it's okay to not totally understand how all of this works. From Claremore, what's going on here, we have some of our jurisdictional considerations. So we've got, everybody abides by federal laws, but we also are on the Cherokee Nation. Then we have state laws, and then also within Rogers County, we're also within the Southwestern Power Pool, wholesale buying from GRDA. City of Claremore operates and then sells that back as a provider. We have the consideration of the water source, the waterway, the water basin, the aquifers. All of those are different, fence lines in terms of a jurisdictional boundary and what something is being pulled from. We then have the public trust, which is the Claremore Economic Development Authority that has existed for years and years and years, but that's another operating player that works in system with this. Then we have the Local Development Review Committee. Now the Local Development Act is what establishes the tax incentive districts. That is what grants them to say this specific boundary, this amount of years for this exact plan. And each of those, or every seat at that table, is made up of a head of the taxing jurisdiction, and each of those is its own fence line. So if we start to really map this out and start with just the city of Claremore, the fence lines start to get really complicated and hard to follow in that bureaucratic map. I had the Northwestern Fire District on this, but they were removed because they didn't want them to be a part of the review committee related to Project Mustang. The money is going to be going to the city fire department, so regardless of their jurisdiction at that time, it was de-annexed. That was an ordinance last year. We've got Sequoia Public Schools, Rogers County, EMS, Fair Board, Tech Centers, City. All these different people have a seat at the table. Then we have the developer, the buyer, the parent company. Beal Infrastructure, those are the people who've been coming, presenting all these project plans, but their money comes from Blue Owl Capital. That's your, Wall Street players. That's who's funding these checks. And this down here is a history of the acquisition of a previous company, which is IPI, into Blue Owl. So that is just kind of the start to even be able to understand the timeline and understand kind of where we're going. And it's not easy, and it's not, I think the city has put kind of an unfair expectation on us as a community and as citizens to totally track and follow and want to believe everything at face value that we're being presented. And that's one of the reasons we're here today, is because some of the things, when I immediately saw the rumors, I was like, oh no, we don't want that. But also, that could be complete speculation. I went to the January 5th meeting, first of the year. They had the agenda packet that had all of the financial reports, searched through that, found anything related to Project Mustang, requested those records. I jumped into a rabbit hole that I never imagined I was going to be in, and 4 months later, I feel like it has been dismissed, doors shut, don't look inside. We want to pretend that this, our government builds a house of transparency, but whenever we're asking them to take a look inside, it's, pull the shades, don't let anybody know what's really going on. And that's not something that I want to see in my community, so I hope that's not what we're gonna inevitably see with this project plan. I did make note of some of those meetings that really, I drew attention to, and I think we can probably send this out. We're gonna have it on our Facebook page, but you can find all of them on the YouTube page. They're recorded. It really starts back in terms of the public eye, because we keep hearing, oh, everything that has been happening with this has been in the public eye. It's been what could happen. But at that January 1st meeting, I heard the city manager say, this is the developer's story to tell. We have no skin in the game. And if we had believed that at face value, we wouldn't be here. Then the next meeting, February 17th, if anybody was there at RSU and you remember what happened there, it was a lot of questions and a lot of things that got raised that didn't really get answers. Some of those answers have now changed since the more recent meeting, May 4th, and then our next meeting is going to be May 18th. But the reason May 21st, 2025 is on there is because that is whenever we saw the Unified Development Code update that actually allowed for data centers to be by right. That's an important consideration because the NDA that was initially signed was back in 2024. Now, I'm going to try to, condense and keep us from totally going down the rabbit hole. But if you go and you watch that video on May 21st and 25, tell me if anything sounds anything related to a data center. If anything sounds related to telecommunications being allowed in a manufacturing park, in an industrial that is a very big difference. We are seeing a lot of different job numbers thrown out. We're seeing different considerations of what our benefit as a community is going to be. And one of the things is it's industrial zoned. It's industrial zoned. That's not relevant to this kind of industrial center. It's just not the same. I want to talk a little bit about rates specific to Claremore and the issues that we have going on here. This is from our city charter on the left. And then on the right is from the audit that was done in 2023 on our rates, because if you've lived here for more than 5 minutes, we have issues with our grid, we have issues with our rates. A few things that I highlighted during that was the findings said Claremore was more reliant on revenues generated by their public works authority than other comparable sized municipalities. That added up 100% with every bit of research that I'd looked into. If you go to GRDA's website, you can see the other cities and the other municipalities that they provide to. You can go to Cushing's website. You can go to Salisaw's website. You can pull their budgets side by side with the city of Claremore. It's not the same. Oh, let me go back. However, it was determined that the electrical rates were 15% higher than in neighboring municipalities and 22% higher in neighboring non-municipal electric providers. And then this last part says that the city manager, or the city respectfully disagreed. That's really hard when they're the ones determining the rates. That's hard to reconcile. If you go to the city's own website and you go to their budget and you try to find details on those numbers and you look to the revenue that they have, that's the chart that they give you. It's useless. They don't break down where that money is actually coming from in that account and how it is being generated. This QR code is just to that digital budget on the city's website. In our records request, we got some of those financial reports that butt up and generate some of those charts that are missing. And I took a look and immediately noticed the revenue percentage generation was the exact same as our consumption. That is impossible. That is an error. I immediately sent it to the state auditor. I said, this is a problem. They have since written me back, confirmed that is an error. They just don't want to, further audit. It's kind of been a pass the bill issue. And since these specific percentages, I can't, prove and audit them to say that's what's determining our power cost adjustment, which generates $250,000 revenue, they don't want to have interest. But I've gotten all that confirmed, and that's from the exact EML file. That's not me making any changes in the spreadsheet. But I did go and fix it. Now this is the pie chart. This is how much they're eating. This is how much they take of the pie. You think of what the city's using, how much demand, what our industrial is. This is what we are giving them in revenue. We are the lifeblood to the entire budget of the city of Claremore. If you are on Claremore's grid, if you get a monthly power bill from the city, you are the lifeblood of every pay raise of the same percentage where it's talking about 20% higher. Look into the employment statistics of this area and tell me what jobs are also 20% higher regionally. I'll save you the time, it's government officials. This is another number, some other numbers I just wanted to pull to highlight. This is from the Oklahoma Tax Commission website. They specifically have how much the state is giving back to Google alone this past year. So when we get this bright idea that we're going to be, Pryor's doing so well, their budget's so improved, they're not in a deficit whatsoever. Overall, yes, they are, and it's every single state payer across, or every single taxpayer across the state that makes up for it. So it's not just the people around Industrial Park. It's not just the people in the city of Claremore. It's not just people in Rogers County. It's every single taxpayer in the state that is going to pay for this one company that we're about to give the largest tax incentive break in ad valorem tax ever. The current rating, Clydesdale, the same company up the road, collectively they will have larger break in ad valorem taxes than the plans for the smelter. To one company. This is just some of those other numbers, but that is what Rogers County got back, or what the state reimbursed to Rogers County for ad valorem taxes for manufacturing, specifically for industrial manufacturing. That, in comparison to overall what we as a state are giving to Google, should be reason enough to not give this company a tax break to put a hyperscale data center in industrial park, in data center park. It doesn't matter where it's going. We don't need to give it a tax cut because we're going to end up paying for it regardless. The last numbers that I want to leave you with that really were concerning as someone who, some of that power stuff blew my mind because I've lived on the grid. I intentionally told my realtor, look for houses off that grid. But I'm not against data centers. I'm not against industrial growth. I'm not a crazed environmental activist. I just don't like what I see. This is not, the government that I believe should exist in Rogers County. I actually find that like one of the deepest ironies is that this is happening in a county named after Will Rogers. Some of the things though in the water demand forecast that I pulled from the Water Resource Board started to freak me out, and it broke down to like exactly how many gallons per animal, like per sheep, per chicken, per everything. It broke it down, 100 plus pages, and I went through it all. And I work in higher education. My son could probably get tuition free there one day, and I hope he is a farmer after seeing these numbers, because if there's something that I can kind of sum up like what, Oklahomans, I think we have Southern hospitality, but I think we have, beyond that, I think we have something unique here, which is we don't just protect, like we really pull each other up. Like you don't see somebody stuck in the ditch without helping them out. But we are not looking to protect right now, and I think it's gonna result in us ending up pulling us up and pulling us out of a situation. When I start to look at some of these numbers and I think about how am I gonna come to the table whether or not, the world my son's growing up in might be different than what I grew up in, if he can still come to the table with those same people across the state that I always know, they might vote differently than I do, they might go to a different church than I do, I always know they come to my table, they're gonna be fed. I go to their table, I'm gonna be fed. We are not going to be able to feed our people based on there is real concern for some of that. These are some of those numbers broken down. This is 2035. We start to see exactly how much is dedicated to what areas for the resource planning. This is with no data centers on the grid. This is without the equivalent of multiple cities impacting our state, impacting those rural water districts, impacting these small municipalities that have the cowboys on the outskirts that are the ones feeding it, whether they realize it or not. Whoop. Let's see if I can get it to go to the next one. This is 2075. I'm going to go back. They are reducing how much water they plan for us to use for livestock, how much they plan for us to use for crop irrigation. That is with no data centers on the grid. That is, every bit of those numbers is skewed at this point. Every bit of this is useless at this point. And we're not having considerations. We need to be having considerations across a much broader picture. But for some reason, the city of Claremore and our city council thinks that they have it figured out, that they know this is going to be the greatest thing, that this is going to fix our grid, that this is going to fix our issues. I don't understand, because I've been on the phone with the director who, helped make these charts. They don't have it figured out. This is those numbers. These are decreasing. That is that is what the lifeblood of this state should be, not us paying for government raises using spiked rates on our municipal public utility providers. This is one of the Facebook pages that we've gotten set up to help share some of this information. But I tried really hard to hit some of the things that I thought would get everybody kind of looking towards, this is a bit of a, small scale level here in Claremore to the bigger picture of what's going on. I'm somebody that, wanted to avoid rumors and speculation and bad publicity for our city. I don't hate this city. I don't hate anybody in the city government. Absolutely not. And if you want to talk to me about my personal background, it's laughable to see some of the things that I've seen the city manager say about me in regards to what research, what questions, what information I'm bringing forward. And so that said, in connecting with the efforts of all these different people, one of the things that we saw in February, whether you were there or not, was someone got arrested. That person is here, and I want to kind of preface and say that it's important to understand where I was coming from on this small scale level to then when I started to look in to understand even just this small scale concept of what's going on, I started to say, whoa, this is way bigger. That's why we have people coming from cities over to talk at this. That's why we have people coming from counties over. It's not because they want to come to Rogers County and pay bail. I promise you that. So that said, I'm going to let Darren talk. We have so many more things. There's a lot more I probably didn't cover, but I wanted to keep it where we could all just kind of talk and keep moving forward. Last thing I did want to say, without farmers, we would all be hungry, naked, and sober. We have got to have farmers. So here's the farmer. Help me out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All righty. Okay. All right. Thank you, Amber. As Amber said, my name is Darren Blanchard. I live in Mounds Creek County, and I'll kind of maybe bounce around from the podium here in a little bit to go over some items. But I just drove in from Wichita, Kansas, where I was at a symposium last night on data centers. We had a couple of industrial hygienists that are former whistleblowers that testified before the United States Congress. And Wichita is in Sedgwick County. Sedgwick County, Kansas is currently faced with 12 hyperscale data center developments. And the county commissioners there say we only have capacity for 3. So that's going to be interesting to decide, who gets the prize at the end of the day. But as Amber said, she's stretched the truth a little bit. I'm technically not a farmer. I came back home to Mounds to take care of my grandparents back in before COVID. And in 2023, we were approached by a land agent for a transmission line. And it was advertised as a way to get wind energy from the Panhandle into the Tulsa markets. But as we start to kind of, look at the language of the easement, start to see other developments come along the way, we find out there's more to it than just getting wind energy from Guyman, Oklahoma to, a power plant in Tulsa, okay? All along that route, there were plans for, wind turbines, solar panels, batteries, and the anchor customers for this energy data centers. So I've started to kind of work with other communities in neighboring counties like Payne County, home of Stillwater, Wagner County, who had the same developer you guys are faced with, Bill Infrastructure, Project Atlas in Coweta. They've recently withdrawn that application. It was situated right next to a 4,900 acre solar power plant that wasn't even going to be supplying power to the data center. That energy was going to customers in Arkansas, Louisiana, or Texas. So it's something called greenwashing. It's made to look like the data center is running off the solar panels, but it's really not, okay? So those are some of the things that got me more motivated to help others. Because what I didn't like about some of our local governments, and even on the state official side, was communities were being lied to. They're not being told the full picture. And so How many were there Monday night on May 4th, okay? Most of you were. One of the things that you probably heard, there was discussion about a gas plant at the old Lufkin property. I'll get into the details in just a second, but in the answer session, if you will, City Manager John Ferry disputed the claims about how much power is currently available or will be available once the data center goes into operation, okay? A data center, given how much power they use, and given they never stop, they're 24/7, 365 days out of the year, they don't take off on holidays, they're gonna have to have dispatchable power. So the industry term is dispatchable. The energy is either dispatchable or non-dispatchable. So coal, gas, nuclear, those are dispatchable forms of energy. Whereas non-dispatchable, you're talking about, wind and solar and things like that. They're weather dependent, time of day dependent, seasonally dependent, okay? So what you guys are most likely going to be faced with is just south of that data center. It's that old Lufkin property. And what I found interesting was, I can't verify, because we don't have a picture before and a picture after, but it was brought up Monday night that a company called Solar Turbines had acquired that property. And Wednesday, there's a sign that appears, it's a temporary, like a vinyl covering sign that now shows, instead of Lufkin, it's Solar Turbines. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. They denied it, but it happens to show up. Okay, interesting. I'm not the only one that noticed it, okay. So, and let me preface everything, I am not anti-data center, I'm not anti-renewable energy, I'm not anti-gas plant, I'm not anti-growth. We need some of this stuff, but again, it's a matter of being upfront. If this is what you're gonna do, then tell us. Then we can help swallow that pill a lot better, okay? It's when you're hiding something, we start to question, what else are you hiding? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask. So with Senate Bill 480, which is known as behind the meter, or BTM, that is what allows, it's a state bill passed in July of last year, it's what allows a large industrial user, like a data center, to generate their own electricity on site. And when you're talking about a data center, you're going to be talking about a gas plant, okay? Particularly one in Oklahoma. So Solar Turbines, sorry, I just took a lozenge and I'm starting to chew on it now. They acquired that Lufkin property in September of 2025. We found out that this happened because in the records, we find that a company called Solar Turbines was clearing an easement from GRDA. And we're like, who is this? So we just put Solar Turbines into Google, and we find out it's a subsidiary of Caterpillar who is specializing in electric generation from natural gas to power AI data centers. So we're like, hey, there's a clue. So we take Solar Turbines, put it in land records, boom, they acquired the Lufkin property in September. And what's funny is Oklahoma Natural Gas, a month later in October, is hitting up landowners to get easements to run a pipeline underneath, okay? It's starting to make sense. So here's an example of what that looks like, okay? That's a 40-acre site in Ripley, Oklahoma, near Stillwater. That picture is taken in October, and I'll back away so y'all can see on the side. So that's about 40 acres there. That is a 420 to 440 megawatt combustion turbine electric generation power plant. So that's what that would look like. That's more than likely going to be just south of the data center. And the issue is the city is banking on what are called franchise fees. Essentially, the city is the toll booth collector for the electricity flowing through the transmission line. That's where the city can make true revenue off of this. The problem, when that gas plant goes online, the electricity to the data center is not flowing through the transmission line. They're generating it on site. It's the equivalent if you putting solar panels on the roof of your house, you're not relying on the electric company, at least for maybe 8 months out of the year, right? And so now the city is handicapping itself because you're not getting that utility franchise fee, that 2 to 3% or whatever's been negotiated, because the data center is generating their own electricity, and then once that gas plant goes online, that revenue stream is cut drastically, okay? So think about that. And City Manager John Ferry, and I'll back away so y'all can see, He disputed the idea that there was just 100 megawatts available on the grid on day one, when that data center goes into operation day one. This text message plus emails previously show that he is communicating with Beale Infrastructure. On the top left, that's Sarah Krulowitz. He's communicating with her, and he says, is Beale's understanding that day one is firm power service from the substation, and day two is when usage of supplemental source starts, the gas plant. Hello. I'm on with GRDA on a phone call, and their understanding is that day one is the first 100 megawatts that can be supplied by a simple connection to the existing transmission line. Note existing. There might be one coming down the pipeline. So here's Sarah Krulowitz. Day one unlocks 100 megawatts of transmission capacity. Day two, gas plant, unlocks greater than 100 megawatts of transmission capacity. So John Fury responds, okay, perfect. Just want to make sure we're all saying the same thing. On Monday, May 4th, the public hearing, John Fury was not saying the same thing as he was in this text message. He said it was 250 megawatts on day one. This text message plus all the prior email communication says it's only 100. Okay? Let their words do the talking. That's an expression that the FBI likes to use when they're interrogating people under investigation, okay? So I mentioned it briefly, but your non-dispatchable wind turbines. Lincoln County is faced with a project that's getting ready to start construction. That's Chandler, Davenport, Stroud area as you're going towards Oklahoma City. The north half of I-44, Lincoln County, what's proposed there are 680-foot tall turbines with 100-foot blade tips. And in other places, you're looking at multi-thousand acre solar projects. Okay, large footprint, okay? And the batteries is the new kind of trend that they're partnering with the solar panels. The issue I have with them is they only hold power for 4 hours. 4 hours. They're a continual cycle battery, so it's not like a lithium-ion battery that goes in a cordless drill. It holds the power for 4 hours. The advantage from the utility or the energy company side is they can acquire electricity at 2:30 p.m. that is excessively produced by wind turbines or solar. It can go into a battery, and with Senate Bill 480, the behind the meter legislation, the data center, when they have that battery on site, they can in turn, they'll buy the electricity at reduced rates or negative rates, literally getting paid to take electricity off the grid, they put it in the battery, and at 6:30 p.m., when the price goes back up, they can turn around and sell it. That's called price arbitrage. Every one of these hyperscale data centers is going to have 20 acres of lithium-ion batteries right next to a 10-acre substation. So when they're saying they'll fund the substation, they're not telling you that who's going to pay for the batteries. Great question. So here is, just to the north of y'all, this is a mapping from the Southwest Power Pool. There's a legend there if you can't see it from the far left, but the green dots are wind, orange are solar, there is a yellow, which is a solar plus a battery, and there is a gas plant on the south end of Ulugal Lake. They're transitioning the coal to gas, but a lot of these power plants that have said they're going to shut the coal plant down and transition to gas. We saw one, I think, near Fort Collins, Colorado. 2 weeks before the coal plant was supposed to go offline, they said, oh, no, hold the phone. We're going to keep that going, okay? So anyway, again, no issues with coal or gas or anything like that. I'm just saying that's a lot of energy infrastructure being added, okay? They need a customer that can take a lot of it in the form of a data center. Okay, and I'll go back to this in just a second. Just want to kind of show you. Amber mentioned Project Clydesdale, Owasso Sperry. So they have battery energy storage systems right here. So you can see that's battery number one. That one is on site. That's right next to the 10-acre substation. There's one right across the street. That's going to be funded by ratepayers. One of those is through PSO, the other's through GRDA. But wait, there's more. There's one in Sperry. This one is, I believe, through PSO, and it's currently a part of PSO's, I think it's $1.2 billion rate hike with a B. So that's going to be funded by ratepayers. That is going to the substation where Project Clydesdale is out. But wait, there's more. Maisie, GRDA territory. That's a solar plus a battery operation. That is going to the same substation where Project Clydesdale is at. So you got 4 battery energy storage systems, all for one hyperscale data center, okay? So back to this, I want to kind of focus something. Last night, did anybody attend a meeting? I guess it was near Chelsea. There was a wind turbine town hall. The company hosted a meeting. So these 2 dots here, you see the green and the orange, okay? So it's called Hickory Creek Wind. And I just want to kind of zoom in on the bottom. So they've leased over 50,000 acres for wind turbines, okay? But wait, there's more. We've got Hickory Creek Solar. So you go back to that, I'll just go back to it real quick. See the green dot and the orange dot? Okay, that's where that's at. So and these solar projects are anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 acres themselves. So that area there is going to be wind turbines and then solar panels scattered around it. And you can see it's just not there, it's all to the north as well. Up to the north from Wichita, just where I was at, there's a large transmission line that originates there. It dips down into Oklahoma. They conveniently avoid the Osage, and they go through the northeast part, the 4 most northeast counties of Oklahoma, and then go back up into Missouri. That's all for data centers, okay? And so let me go back through those real quick and get back. Mays County, just to use kind of the example, Google prior, right? We hear how great that is. The city had a $900,000 budget shortfall. Mays County had a nearly $5 million budget shortfall, okay? That's recent. So there are 9, when you count the yellows as 2, there's a total of 18 projects here, 9 solar and 9 battery. That's all in Mays County, okay? If you go to maybe this one right here near Shodo, I have family that live there. Amber, you may have to pull that up.
What's the video?
Yeah, it's going to be the Shoto video. So anyway, this is just to the west of Google's data center in Pryor. There we go. Go and hit full screen. Can we go back just a little bit? Yeah, so this is approximately one section of land. Yeah, there's the substation it starts. And so a section is 640 acres. So this is roughly 600 acres or so.
What is that right there?
Those are solar panels, ground-mounted solar panels, utility scale solar panels.
Pristine farmland.
Pristine farmland.
Yeah. And so this is about, it's just under a minute, and as you can see, I'll come to a corner, and you can see a little bit as you look back to the west, and then as you look to the north, you'll see some more coming. Now keep in mind, that's one section.
Yes.
This is a 3,000 acre project. I have 5 videos. 5 times 6 is 30, right? So 5 times 600, 3,000 acres. As you can see there's more of it. And it goes back and back and back.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll just go back to the slides real quick, Amber.
That's the hill that separates Claremore from Pryor. It almost goes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tab, there you go. And I was going to go, yeah, go back, good, yeah, there you go. Let's go there. So again, that's one of those orange dots, okay? They have 9 solar projects either under construction or in the queue, okay? All right, just want to point that out. Go ahead, there we go. Here's the other issue I have with solar, okay? Stormwater runoff. The construction process, they strip the topsoil, they store it, and the idea is we're going to help reduce compaction. That way the vegetation become rerouted. So when the construction process is done, they return the topsoil. And go ahead and pull that up, Amber. That is in Bandera County. This company has a lease in Skiatook. They've now went bankrupt. That energy is supposed to go to Clydesdale. That's Virginia. And look at the bottom. No one denying there's a problem. That's not a solar project, that's Porter, Oklahoma. the Wagner County Commissioners denied that project, the 4,900 acres on June 16th, and everything is happening in reason for me, I feel like. We had about a 4 to 5 inch rain the Saturday before the Monday meeting, and we got this video. And it said, County Commissioners, I think we got a problem. Because there's so much of this 4,900 acres that's in the floodplain. County Commissioners, we think of roads and bridges primarily. They do a lot more than that, but that caused that right there. So what would happen if you strip all that topsoil, you store it, and you put in 4,900 acres of solar panels, which is the equivalent of 1.8 million solar panels, the soldering alone in there is approximately 60,000 pounds of lead, okay? All of that stuff's coming from Southeast Asia. That doesn't make America great again, okay? So let's go back to slides. And here's the issue. Some of this might work in Texas. Some of it might work in Ohio. But in Oklahoma and southern Kansas, we're in a unique spot. They're called a transition zone in terms for turf and forage grass. That's why Oklahoma State and Kansas State partner in turf and forage grass research. So you're going to put ground-mounted solar panels out there, and you're going to strip the topsoil, return it, and hope the vegetation becomes re-rooted. It's going to take 3 years for the vegetation to become re-rooted. You get a 4-inch rain, 6-inch rain, you're going to have erosion issues. And the problem is there are only 2 shade-tolerant grasses that can survive in Oklahoma. That's tall fescue and perennial rye. But the problem with that is, come late spring, summer, and early fall, it's going to die out. It has to be irrigated. You're talking about ground-mounted solar panels, so that means you're going to have drip irrigation because you can't have an overhead sprayer, right? You got ground-mounted solar panels. They're not going to run 4,900 acres of drip irrigation. Not going to happen. It's too costly. So what's going to happen is you're going to have erosion, and county commissioners are going to say, you're going to have to get that problem fixed. Well, it won't work, sir. Then put rock down. So you're going to have to xeriscape it. And so that's what I foresee happening in a lot of situations. There might be some installations that can make it work, but I just don't think Mother Nature's just not going to allow it, okay? So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I know we're going to have some opportunity for questions. There is a microphone there. If you don't want to get up to it, we can have somebody maybe repeat it. That way it can get captured for the audio. But do you guys have any immediate questions? I just wanted to touch on a couple of things, mainly John Feary disputing this idea of how much power is available on the grid. His text messages shows he knows how much is there, but when it's in a public meeting where he's locking people out of the room, he's not revealing the real truth. And Bill Infrastructure is denying there's a gas plant. Yeah, there's not going to be wind and solar on the less than 300 acres, but all around there's going to be energy infrastructure placed to help power some of these facilities. So that needs to be made aware, and the public needs to be made aware of that. So anyway.
I've got the microphone if anybody wants to raise their hand.
Yeah.
I can talk about it.
And Amber too. You do. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give us a list of everyone that signed NDAs that are elected officials?
Okay, so I've done a lot of work with Coweta, and I know we're in Claremore. I'm not confused because I drove in from Wichita, okay? But you're dealing with the same developer. Let me tell you what happened in Coweta. City manager signed actually 2 NDAs, but also the mayor and the vice mayor signed NDAs. And we filed records requests, and those were not coming back as responsive records. They should have, until the vice mayor runs his mouth on Facebook and says, well, I signed an NDA. Oh, really, sir? Because we filed records requests and they're not coming back. Well, let me talk to somebody about that. We file another request. Here comes those NDAs. In Claremore, there's only one NDA that's been received in a records request, and that's with City Manager John Feary. I mean, I think it's possible that your mayor and deputy mayor signed those same confidentiality agreements just like they did in Coweta, but if they're not being supplied as a record, we can't say. It's speculation, but there was a pattern with Coweta, and the common denominator is bill infrastructure.
I don't know that this thing is on, but
It is.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't need to know all that work you did. They signed an NDA with a company against the people that elected them. It should stop there, not just morally, but legally.
Yeah. The other thing too is the unique situation about Coweta is the NDAs that were signed by the mayor and the vice mayor. I have it in writing from the Wagner County District Attorney that document is illegal, quote unquote, not compliant with the law, quote unquote, runs afoul of the Open Meetings Act, quote unquote, any signature would be legally problematic. He's not talking about the NDA signed by the city manager. He's talking about the ones signed by the mayor and the vice mayor. Yeah. There's a reason why Coweta is under investigation, but not just local police, the district, but also too the district attorney and OSBI. Yes. Okay? Yeah. Again, common denominator, bill infrastructure. Did they just do that with Coweta? Maybe they did, but I highly doubt it. That's just speculation.
I would just add to, one of the first things that I did after I went to that first January meeting is I talked to small business owners in Claremore, and I was like, is this normal business practice? Is this something you do? And they said, yeah, this is something that happens. This is a practice when when the dispensary and the medical marijuana and all that hit the surge. Every single one of those came out under an NDA because they don't want the neighbors to push back, or they don't want the competitors to know. None of them lasted this length, and none of them took the levels of approvals. None of them had any level of this kind of infrastructure upgrade. Yeah. And so the comparison is not fair when you think about the applicability of an NDA whenever it's actually needed or whenever it's historically done in our city and in our community. So, I mean, I would just say there is some, perhaps, justification to that somewhere. I don't know if I have an opinion on it either way, but that's the first thing I did, is I was like, have you guys signed an NDA?
Right.
Yeah, some of them have.
I've
never to this level.
I've signed NDAs for my company within the company. I can see him signing something to protect Rogers County, but that's against Rogers County that he signed. Mm-hmm. It's for the corporation.
The other thing too is you said elected officials. I just want to point this out. It goes back to we've requested records and they're saying no records exist. You have another aspect in play here at the county. We know that NDAs were presented to at least one county commissioner. We think two. Okay? We know that because we can see the email chain. And so as a former compliance officer, okay, I have this record on the city side, in this case CETA. Okay, they're technically different. I want to reconcile that on the county side. I can see it was sent here, and I want to see it was received here, how it was handled. The county says no records exist. I sense a problem here. Again, it goes back to Coweta, that's why I bring it up. They were not releasing that NDA because it's illegal, and why it's illegal, it says it cannot be released without consent from bill infrastructure. And when someone goes onto Facebook and says, I signed an NDA, we've got you, as Dean said, I think, by the short hairs. I'm blaming you. It was actually Jim Belk. I had a phone call with him.
When did they add the data center into the industrial park to be allowed? Because it was not in there.
That's right.
Yeah, Amber. May 2025?
And if you go in the internal emails, the way it worked was the public trust, that's their job to bring in businesses to our communities. If you go to their website, you'll see lots for sale, employment statistics, all these kinds of things. Beal contacted CETA. Meggie Knight, CEO, signed the first. I think we do have her NDA as well.
Yeah.
She signed the NDA, had to negotiate in terms of this happening in Claremore with our city. So she reaches out to John Fury, city manager. He signs an NDA. That NDA then umbrellas every single city employee, city office, everyone.
Really?
Because he signed on behalf of the city of Claremore, meaning the fire chief, meaning the city planning. Wow. Every single entity within the city is then under that NDA.
There's a number.
It's whenever they're sending back and forth emails. But as far as the UDC, they found that in their due diligence that it couldn't be by right, that it was no telecommunications, and that is a huge difference for the manufacturing in an industrial park versus telecommunications in an industrial park. Okay? Whenever they identified that, they went back and forth with the city planner. The words from the email are public intentionality. They talk about the difference. They say you can either do a variance use or special exception, and both of those would require notification to property owners within 300 feet. So the process would have been, you have to tell them this is for a data center. Instead, they did it through a text amendment. That is, I feel that alone very arguably constitutes what I believe is contract zoning. They literally say, we cannot contract with this company unless our city is zoned this way. Boom, the city's all of a sudden zoned that way.
Yeah.
The NDA was signed back in 2024. We called them out about this the other night at May 4th. The city planners spoke about it a little bit and was like, well, it's in this bucket, but it's in this bucket. It would have been allowed in a residential zone, but not here. Think about that. Telecommunications might have been allowed in a residential zone. Telecommunication might have been allowed in a small commercial. Industrial telecommunications would have not ever been allowed in a residential or small commercial or any of those. So they're trying to use some word salad and confuse you to make it sound like we didn't do anything wrong because, you know, this is a bucket here and this is a bucket here. That's not how it works. It's an industrial park that actually has people that work there, that actually take home a paycheck. That's not what this is going to be.
Basically narcissistic.
But go and watch that video.
And to kind of touch on one thing, I know you're talking about, you know, the UDC, the Unified Development Code, but the real answer is February 20th, 2024. That's when the NDA was signed, okay? Approximately 6 weeks later, on an agenda packet with CETA, there is an item on there that talks about adding a gas line of 100 megawatts, I believe it was. 6 weeks later, they're already talking about getting power to this potential industrial user. Again, I don't have a problem with the gas plant, but I just have a problem with they're not being upfront. And when we confront them on it, they deny it. You saw the text message.
And I would say too, whenever the city manager is telling us that all these parts have happened in the public eye, when you go back and you look at those meetings, when you go and you see what they're saying, nothing says data center, nothing says Beale, knowing the entire time it was for this specific project with this exact dimensions, needing these exact power. Like that to me is part of the main issue is why couldn't you have just let us know then when you guys were working in all these changes, because you've been building, you know, this strategy of keeping the public out from the beginning.
You have another question, or is it him?
I have one more.
Okay. And make sure you're talking to Mike.
When we were at the meeting at the college,
Use the microphone.
Yeah.
when we were at the meeting at the college, and they sat there and said there was not a deficit for Pryor, and she got on the phone and said she called them and said that they did not have a deficit. She was lying her little face off because I have contact with someone in that area, and I knew it. I wanted to stand up and call her a liar.
Mm-hmm.
I think
She
part of
lied
that,
to everybody that night.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that because I was in the Rogers County Jail. But I can tell you that all you got to do is look up Pryor budget shortfall 2024. KOTV news article September is approximately $900,000. And yeah, it just amazes me. And there's another instance, like I said, Rogers, or not Rogers, but Mays County was approximately about $5 million short.
I think it's another example of like word salad, ping-ponging this back to make us feel dumb. It's like they are not understanding the numbers and the questions that we're asking, so they're going to pull numbers and they're going to pull details from a different consideration and feed it to us like it's all good.
And I know, I spoke to a council person today And they said that they didn't know anything about it until that meeting in February.
CETA had over 11 executive sessions from their 12 regular scheduled meetings and then however many extra special meetings. And the city of Claremore had, I think, over 15. So it's not the first time they were hearing about this.
Yeah.
Are they not going to allow us a bigger venue on Monday?
Yeah.
We're working
We'll
on it.
see. There's a question there, and I think a gentleman in the back.
To start with, what they're doing is dishonest, narcissistic gaslighting. That's what you do when you get caught up in a bunch of lies. You got to lie to cover the liar. You got to, you just got to look this way, or you just don't understand what but we won't sit down and have a conversation with you. By the stance that they've all taken, and as far as I'm concerned, they have no desire to please the citizens, the citizens in this community, this town, this city. If you're connected to it, those guys are hanging together. If you're probably part of a big church in this town, there's a good chance that you're buddying up with John Ferry, and I have a real problem with that. Hopefully we'll get us a church here in town that'll maybe put every church out of business that does that, because we need leaders. One of my questions is, do you feel we have a good legal standing, and how would you suggest that we could get some, supposedly Durbin said Gettner responded to, going to look into that. I hope that happens, because if that's a real thing, that should happen. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, how do we approach this as citizens? How do we get you guys seem to have some of this together. And if it come down to it, I would probably look to support something to, as far as a legal fund or something, as, not that I hope it comes to that. I mean, the reality that as citizens we're saying we might have to get lawyers involved because our government is shutting us out is a problem. Surely there's got to be I know honest and lawyer probably line up about honest and plumber, but I'm an honest plumber, so there's got to be an honest lawyer out there. So
You can definitely.
Yeah.
If I could just add to that.
Yeah.
Again, he said the house would stay in short terms. First off, I have to admit, I didn't really know what to expect when I arrived here. I thought it was going to be another gripe session, but I have to admit that both, is it Amber?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Darren,
Yeah.
both of you have done a lot of homework. You've presented a lot of information, which is very helpful. And again, I obviously have my concerns. My concern at this point, and I think he touched on it just lightly at the end there, what are the next steps? If I were to put on a hat of a business director and I'd say, hey, listen, I heard your problem. What is the solution? What needs to take place? Is there an action plan that's being developed that the community can put something behind it and push it forward? Because again, it sounds like the community obviously is being left in the dark. So all this information that you've done, it's great, but what are the steps being suggested to move forward?
Yeah, so your first option, and it's not a great option from just my simple observation, is hope the city council either tables it or votes it down. There's an expression from Grumpy Old Man, I believe it is. We know which one that is, that I'm not going to share here, but that's your first option. That's not a good option, but it is an option. The second option is or are there any violations of the Open Meetings Act, Open Records Act, particularly the first one, Open Meetings Act? Because anytime there is a violation of the Open Meetings Act, let's just say that happened on October 21st, anything that's been done after that has also been done in violation as well. So if you were to find a valid, could hold up in court, violation of Open Meetings Act occurred on October 21st, this whole thing's got to hit the reset button back to October 21st. If Bill Infrastructure has to do that, it's not hit reset, it's game over. They'll pull out and they'll put their chips somewhere else. Because it's not going to be a good look, because they're the ones that, promoted the Open Meetings Act violation. So in my opinion, there is at least one of those that happened to occur on October 21st. And if an attorney were to look at it, obviously they're going to need some money, but I think they could have a legitimate argument to at least put a pause on this thing to figure out, did a violation occur here? But other than that, in terms of, you mentioned, retainer fee, you guys are going to have to do a fundraiser type of deal. Sand Springs, had a cookout and food was donated. The labor was the locals doing it. They did bologna sandwiches on a cooker, bratwurst, and they raised over $2,500 on a Saturday. And so, you need 10,000. Well, there's a quarter of it right there. So that's those are your options. Somehow to get an injunction, to get an investigation, to see what all has been done wrong.
I would add to that, we have the kind of last public moment is Monday. That's the 18th. They're going to vote for the tax incentive district. They're going to put the shovel in the ground the next day. When we need to be asking them to move that meeting, make it at a better location. We need to be telling them that they can put this on a ballot. There is so much information relevant to these districts that shows it is not just we have to say yes or no. You can call your councilman, you can convince them. If it goes through, we have a window that we can do a referendum petition, and that is what revokes the ordinance that puts it in place. Yeah. Saying it doesn't matter what the city council says, we the people got enough signatures. That is really hard to do. That is extremely hard to do, and I think we've, some of us are in some smaller working groups have connected with lawyers that are experienced in doing that, and we're not there yet until that window's there. But one of the things that I keep thinking back, and what I tried to do, is we shouldn't need to get an attorney. Like you guys said, we shouldn't be having to pass around a collection plate to hire a lawyer. Like, that's what the Attorney General is for. That's what these offices exist for. Call them. Let them know. Call your reps, call your legislators, tell them they can walk their butts across the hall into the AG's office and ask for a question to be submitted relevant to NDAs being signed for this level of project. They can do that tomorrow. There's nothing that's stopping Ali Seyfried, Mark LePac, any of those people from writing out a formal submission to Juncture Drummond and asking, make an opinion on this tomorrow. Every person needs to call. And if you're a citizen of Claremore specifically, be having conversations with your neighbors. Be letting them know what's going on, because that's going to give you an idea of who to go to first if we do need to get signatures on a referendum. And if it does go through, I think that signatures will also be gathered for a recall petition.
And we'll be back here Friday, so when you guys leave, go talk to your neighbors, go door knock, say, hey, come to this meeting with me. So that we can.
Yeah. Here's another question.
Okay, so there's one right here. Sounds like there's some
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
as to what course of action is taken. So I agree, it's going to take a multi-pronged approach, not only with possibly seeking an attorney's advice or help, a referendum, a recall, all those are options available. And again, I like to thank my neighbor. He was the one that got me involved into here. And again, obviously, within this country, there's estimated 4,000 projects similar to this across this entire country. I think just here in Kansas is 21.
12 in Sedgwick, yeah.
Well, right now they have proposed 21. In Arkansas, 11. Here in Oklahoma, it's 38. I think Texas has 411 and California has 289. So again, it's being done. So my question now is, what have other communities done that were successful? Is there a way to look at what's been done that has been successful to see if we can adapt some of that here?
So I can answer your question pretty quick. Coweta, Oklahoma.
That's the example that I have, but that's a rarity.
Well, if it's rare or often, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They have planned and installed. Those are the
It seems like problem after problem after problem is problem. I mean, I don't know that they have any sustained, you guys might know, they have any sustained victories of we've built hyperscale data centers.
Are you talking about build infrastructure?
Anybody that hasn't affected cattle, hasn't affected the neighboring, these hyperscale systems with the solar panels and And the wind turbines, it's like, from what I'm understanding, it seems like there's a lot of adverse effect following these things. And they're not that, I mean, we're just now getting into this. So we have no, this seems like it's going in a really bad direction.
Right. I'll try to answer your question as little bit as I can. I'll come back to Coweta because that's the poster child if you want to shut something down. What we were able to do is convince the city council that, first of all, at its core, this is a salesman. Keep it simple. And they're looking at a 300-acre site for a hyperscale data center, which was situated right next to a 4,900-acre solar power plant. The Coweta City Council is just looking at the data center. You have to look at all of the externalities, take into consideration, even though they're not voting on that power plant, that's Wagner County Commissioners, this is coming with it if we greenlight this project. The transmission line from east central Colorado running through all of northern Oklahoma into southern Arkansas, 1,300 miles of high voltage transmission line is coming with this project. And then when you catch either the city manager or the developer in a lie, you pounce on it and say, we told you this is a salesman. We've caught them in a lie. If this was a used car salesman, you catch that used car salesman in a lie, you're not buying that car. So why are you going to put a hyperscale data center when this company has no track record of being a well-known good neighbor to communities?
They're literally all hat and no cattle. I mean, literally. Selling a Mustang. Like, the irony is beyond.
You're good. You're good. Yeah. Well, I tried.
For the city, they're saying it's a data center. This is going to be a data storage. These are cookie cutter plants they put in. So they're not going to need 50 people like they said in the meeting.
Right.
There'll be what I call data rats running around from data center to data center. There won't be, they will not have people on site.
Right.
So the city is not going to get tax money that way. If they generate this gas plant that you're talking about, where's the city going to get the revenue from? It's going to be zero. So you're going to have a big data center or data storage place that land is used up. The other thing is, this is an industrial park. They use all that up. We need manufacturing here for jobs. The manufacturing, they're going to have to go out our tax money and buy more land to get that industrial site. One person I've heard said, well, maybe Tulsa will help us there. Yeah, right.
So I'll touch on something you said. You mentioned the 50 jobs. Yes. Okay, I'll use Sand Springs as an example. They're going through a tax incremental district approval process right now. In writing, it says this will result in 50 direct and indirect jobs. Keyword, indirect, remote workers. So guess what the real boots on the ground is? This is from Oklahoma Department of Commerce. It's 9.2 jobs per building. So
it is in writing. We get it in writing that there's going to be 50 employees, permanent employees on site.
But it will not be that way.
I know.
Right. It'll be 50 direct and indirect. Approximately 40 of those are going to be remote.
Because this, if you look at the Facebook, they just laid off 5,000 people. They are running these shops AI. Mm-hmm. It is all, they can run all this stuff remotely. All they need in these sites is people that just swap out servers. Something breaks, they just tell them to swap that piece of computer out, and then they can do it remotely in.
Yeah, so those 9.2 jobs per building are going to be coming from security, so off-duty law enforcement, not a problem, that's a good job, but it's not, in my opinion, a tech job, right? And then you're going to have a lot of maintenance positions, whether you're talking about landscaping or just general maintenance to the building. And then you're going to have maybe an engineer or maybe a plant manager or someone along those lines. That's going to be the base of your 9.2 jobs per building.
And another thing that I would add is these companies, we keep hearing it's going to be local or it's going to be a domestically owned, domestically traded. There's only 5. Look at those 5 companies. Every single one of them is spending billions with a B, research and development, to put these in space. They don't want them here. They don't want to generate power. They want to get it straight from the sun on solar panels floating around the world so they can get all the, they have no plans. This is a race. That's something you guys have to remember. This is a race.
Yeah.
This is a bubble. The last time we started to make this level of regionalization of manufacturing, of production, of this kind of stuff, and regionalization of control was World War II.
Well, when this data center comes in, what about all of that smoke? That is going to take a huge megawatt.
It's
That's just peanuts to
Yeah.
what a data center.
and I'll correct you. It's actually it's a gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts.
It's going, I mean, it will take, GRDA is going to have to generate that power.
Yeah. We have another question, Dean.
I did, but I sit in the wrong part of the building,
Well,
or I'm the wrong sex.
yeah.
Okay. Go for it. What's your question?
You gonna hold the mic?
Not after that.
Well, I want to raise a couple of things here if we can. I've been in contact with an attorney to talk about this and just to kind of lay the groundwork out to get an opinion on where we are in his mind and what we need to do. I think all the things that have been suggested are very viable. I had the former Attorney General of the state call me and ask me how this project was running. And he suggested that I get a hold of some groups in America that actually exist to help fund places like this, because people, when they have to rise up and fight something, they don't have the money. And so these groups exist to help with that. And so I'm trying to get that list together and reach out to them. I'll go to where they are or do Zoom calls and try to get some information for us. I want to present a part of this that needs to happen here. We need to, and this is not a gripe, but we need to get people involved in standing with us. Typically, a city council or a city manager is not going to listen to 15 or 20 people that are there. We do need to get this meeting moved that's coming on Monday to another place, even if it's out underneath an oak tree out by the lake, so that we can have 1,000 people there.
They have been used. Claremore has been used.
The issue here that's even bigger than this, and you need to be aware of this. I went out and typed into AI a legitimate question. Given the fact that the Rothschild family said 2 years ago, water is not guaranteed for everyone on the planet. That's a red flag signal that comes from an elite family that's evil. I followed the trail, and what I did was I typed in a question. How does the UN and the WEF intend to use data centers in America? Has anyone here tried that? Did you try it? I was shocked about the answer that I got. They intend to put everything and use all of this data as a weapon against people to reach their sustainable goals, the sustainability goals that they stated in the 2030 plan, which is to create 15-minute cities. So my question next was, well, really, what is there left to do? And I thought, well, what if there's different AIs, which there are. So I asked the question again, and I got a little bit of different answer. And so I thought, when I speak to the county, not the county commissioners, but to the city council, when they tell me that AI is an absolute necessity for this area, my question is, why is it a necessity if it's going to lie to you about what it's for? If you get one answer that says yes, it's going to be used by the one world government to do a sustainability thing here in Claremore, which is their goal. They're going to do it in Owasso. That town is just about gone as far as having its own ability to function. It'll be controlled outside the country. Tulsa is absolutely gone. Many of the cities in America are. We need to be fighting to keep this place independent. So anything that we do needs to be based upon the founding documents of this country. Not about how we feel, not about what we think might happen, but what we stand on as a people. And that has been under attack for 250 years. So the bottom line is, I honestly believe, based on the answer that I got, is this is all a plan to try to destroy not only Claremore, but to just try to destroy this whole nation and make it part of a one world government. It's been tried before and failed. If you go back in time, I'm a history teacher, if you go back 1,000 years, they were doing exactly what they're doing today without technology. They controlled the farmers. They worked them to death. They starved them. Made them produce things that they didn't want to produce. They did that through the church even. So we've got a serious problem that's bigger than just a data center sitting out on the edge of Claremore. We've got all of America that needs to wake up. And I think the way to wake up is to learn the data of what's here. I would challenge all of you to go home or do it here while you're sitting here, get on your phone and ask AI, what does the UN and the WEF want to use the data centers for? And just see what they say. And if they give you different answers, then my argument is, why do we even need it if it's going to be a false answer each time? Incorrect. So we're going down the right road. We just are behind. Now, let me give you a little bit of history about NDAs. I worked for a Fortune 200 company. I've worked with NDAs. We used them. But it wasn't to fool the citizens of a place. It was to protect our proprietary information from competitors. After they were established in the 40s, I think 47 or 48, passed as a law that NDAs could exist. In 1974, there were a lot of city governments and county governments everywhere that lobbied and lobbied and lobbied and lobbied to get the ability to have a bill produced and introduced, and they did, to give them the right to use NDAs to hide what they were doing. 1974. And that's been going on for all these years. We need to have a conversation with the people of this city and this county, starting there, and then northeastern Oklahoma. Do we exist to be serfs on the Cadillo, to be used by a one world government, or do we exist here to praise God and to begin to live our lives with liberty, to introduce the gospel to our kids that come along, rather than the crazy doctrines that they're hearing in public school around the country? Are all of you with me on that?
I'm with you.
Okay, so here's the first step. Go home and start calling people and tell them that Friday night we have a meeting here. They got to be here.
I will.
No ifs, ands, or buts. That's with one T. Let's get people out here to hear the truth, to hear the data. I'm convinced that if people will hear the data, and if they can add 2 and 2 together and still get 4, they might be able to put this together and say, hey, we've got a problem, let's go to work.
Yeah, and just to kind of build off that, You know, I live in Mounds Creek County. There's been a lot of stuff said about me, and there's a narrative that's trying to be created. I know where it's coming from. I was brought into this about a transmission line trying to defend my property and my future and dreams. And then I started helping other communities. And like I said, I just got back from Wichita. In March, I was in Montana helping the Northern Cheyenne Indian Reservation there. So, you know, this is just not a matter of me wanting to go and try to make a scene at these events. That's the narrative that's been spun by some people. That's not what this is about, okay? There's a lot of speculation on what the data centers are for, surveillance, you know, whatever the dean says, right? You know, hey, maybe you're right. I don't know. Who knows?
AI says it.
Yeah, AI says it. It's got to be right. My theory is this is a play on water rights. When you look at Project Clydesdale, 7.4 million gallons of water per day is on the permit request. That doesn't mean they're going to use that, but they can if they want to. Coweta was 5.4 million gallons of water per day. Yep. Stillwater, when all 6 buildings go into play, it's 1.3 million gallons of water per day times 6 buildings, which is roughly 8 million gallons of water per day. They're having to run through a loan, which resulted in a 30% rate hike to the water, the tap holders from Call Lake to Stillwater. Okay? So we subsidize it. No matter what they say, that happens, okay? That's a fact. Everybody talks about the electricity, but it's the water too. It's a play on water rights. And let me say this. So Bill Infrastructure, John Ferrier is saying, oh, it's going to be air-cooled, closed loop. Nope. Then tell me why this property is actually in the jurisdiction of Rural Water District Number 2 and Rural Water District Number 3. I've spoken to both of them, those managers, and they flat out told me we don't have the capacity to serve them. So if they're using air to cool the technology inside there, why did the Rural Water District manager say we don't have the capacity to serve you? So what's going to happen is that's going to be de-annexed, and the city of Claremore will provide the water to the data center.
It is annexed.
All adds to
That
that.
property is annexed.
No, it's
If they get there's city fence line, there's water district fence line, there's fire district, there's taxing, all these different fence lines, and they have to annex and de-annex to make it fit exactly. They have to build. They're building the pin around this Mustang.
yeah. So technically, there are 2 landowners, CETA and Flieger. Flieger's the private landowner. But hang on. Water districts have a jurisdiction. As of right now, today, if they were to turn that on thing today, that's Rural Water District 2 and 3's jurisdiction. It has to be de-annexed and go to the city. And that hasn't been done yet.
Ooh. Well, did you remember what he said when that new car wash comes on board?
Yeah.
And they have a fire? Heaven forbid.
They can't put it out.
They're going to do
But
They're not going to be able to put it out.
Right.
And the mayor has got everybody, so my husband's a retired fireman.
Yeah.
And I walked up to him at the Christmas party and I was talking to some of the firemen. And I said, are y'all ready to fight the fires? And
Goodbye, ladies. Thank you for coming.
the captain says, oh, we're trained. We've got this all down pat. We're ready to go. And I just turned around and walked off. Idiots.
Yeah, that's right.
You find out how many people are going to show up to fight a fire.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to go in and fight the fire at the data center. It's another thing to go and respond when there's a flood and that entire neighborhood is underwater because they've completely have changed the earth and everything going around there. Our city has lacked due diligence in that very specific area.
That's right.
We have had a wrongful death lawsuit over it.
We have no right. We have no right to demand that we follow what the government tells us. I grew up in a generation that they said, hey, Agent Orange is not dangerous at all. And Camp Lejeune water supply, oh, it's safe. Hundreds of thousands of people died.
Okay, what I want you to
Are
do.
you guys good?
Wait, I got one more thing.
Oh.
Okay. I want you to go to Rumble and put in Catherine with a C, Catherine Austin Fitz.
Oh, yeah.
Go to her and listen to what she says about the data centers. Okay? She was asked to serve on the Federal Reserve Board and she turned it down in 1998. She's brilliant. So if you'll go there and listen to her, she's just saying this is prison, this is surveillance. They cannot track us spatially or financially unless they have the data centers. And once that's all in place, that's what it's all about. That's all I got to say.